actually had one tour in Avignon like last Friday. So
Wow.
Hey.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
How many people in the tour?
Two.
Two?
And I was kind of going through the notes, you believe me or not, of, like Visit of Avignon. I was going through my notes because. Yeah.
All right, everybody. So welcome to another episode of Guide Collective Roundtable. Today we're being hosted on Adventures with Sarah, just because I wanted to start off here and let you know, anybody who follows me here on Adventures with Sarah, that this is our big project. So this is the Guide Collective. If you haven't tuned in to us before, we have a program every Thursday called Guide Roundtable, which you are watching now, where we bring in part of our team of 25 magical guides and we discuss topics that are current. So today I am the host, and normally it's my friend Andrew Vallone. He's off this week. So today I'm being joined by Francisco Glaria Baines from Spain.
Hola.
So let's see. Hola. Oh, there we go. That was right. Hola.
Yeah.
Nina Seffusatti from France. Bonjour.
Bonjour. Bonsoir. Bonsoir. It's
Bonsoir.
evening here, right?
And my friend Ben Curtis, who is living currently in somewhere in Eastern Europe.
In Prague, but don't call it Eastern Europe. We're in Central Europe. You're in Prague.
Okay. And how would I say good evening to you then?
Dobrý večer.
Dobrý
večer.
Dobry večer. Okay, very good. All right, so today's Guide Roundtable, we've got a number of interesting topics that we'd like to touch on, but the first thing we'd like to do is that every month with the Guide Collective, we come up with a theme and then we submit writing on that theme. So this month's theme, in anticipation of Halloween, is myths and folktales. So I wanted to kind of kick off the conversation just by talking about myths or folktales, and I'd love to hear from each of you guys a myth or a folktale that has been a part of your experience growing up wherever you are from, or maybe a myth or tale that has something to do with the place that you live. In the introduction letter to the Guide Collective this month, the Founders Letter, I wrote a little bit about the myth from my own hometown, because even American towns have myths, and our myth as a child was that there are these crosses up on a hill. I'm from Ventura, California, and from downtown, you can see these crosses up on a hill. And at night when the sun sets, the light kind of glints off of them and then they are lit up at night. And as children, we were always told the story about how there was a man who was disfigured in a fire somewhere, and he was too deformed to be seen by regular humans. And so he lived up on the hill behind the crosses. And so at night when you saw the glinting of the sunlight off of the crosses, that was the char man up there. And you didn't want to go out at night because you never knew if the char man was going to come and get you. So that was kind of my own version of a myth, a boogeyman sort of tale in my hometown. So I'm just curious if you have any myths that come from your own culture or experience. So Fran, what about you?
Well, first you introduced me as a Spanish, but I live in the north of Spain, which is called the Basque Country. And here in the Basque Country, we don't have myths. We are a myth.
Nice.
This is a very ancestral culture, and everything is based in mythology. Okay, so here, the creation of humans obviously has to be Basque because we're from here, and nature, everything started here because we had Mother Nature sleeping here in this part of the world. A dragon came to kill her, but she won. But she had a couple of cuts in her fingers, and there was some drops flowing. Anyway. At the end, two women came out, and both of them, they were pregnant, one with a boy and one with a girl. And as this Mother Nature fell deeply in love with the babies, she brought all of these mythological creatures to protect them. So we have mythological creatures for everything and anything you want. We have for the forest, for the rivers, for the wind, for anything, we have a mythological animal. So we're full of that.
You are a myth. You are one big myth, actually.
You're mythical. Nina, how about you?
Well, my background obviously is not, I live in France right now, but I'm Danish, right, by birth. So, and that's an interesting mix in I would say in Scandinavia or Nordic countries, is that we have our Viking myths, obviously, and which is a lot about nature, being connected to nature, as a lot of pagan myths, of course, and beware of the sea, because what is Denmark? It's 400 islands, right? So if you're not careful with the sea, And then with Christianism, coming up, Christian religion coming, obviously there has been a few kind of strange changes of the Viking myth. And now, of course, and then 19th century, Hans Christian Andersen, obviously. I mean, I can't pass Hans Christian Andersen because his fairy tales were so incredible. And they're all around us in some way in Denmark also. And then moving to France, right? You have that Viking myth, and then you figure out that there are a bit of the same myths linked to nature when you go way back before the Christian religion, obviously. I mean, you have the Romans in France, and the Greek before the Romans, and the Gauls before the Greeks. So there's a huge mix. But when it comes down, what it all comes down to, isn't that interesting? It's very often nature, somehow linked to be careful with nature, take care of nature. Nature is your friend, but it's also your enemy. You know, it's such an incredible way of seeing things that obviously can be linked to environmental ideas today very easily. And by the way, in Scandinavia, you do have people kind of going back to the Viking ideas. It's not a church, it's not a religion, but they do relink to nature through their origins and what was there long before the Christian religion, right?
Excellent. All right. And Ben, what about you?
Yeah, well, so I mean, I grew up in the U.S., but have been living outside the U.S. at various points for many years, and I was just thinking about this question in terms of where I live now in Prague, in the Czech Republic, and maybe like the Basque Country, like just myths are so deep here and so interwoven into the culture and politics and society and thinking, and I really came to kind of engage with these in a way, even 20 years ago when I was living here previously, because I was at that point I was a student doing my doctoral dissertation research and studying this period in the 19th century when the Czechs kind of like start to like recreate their myths, like telling the old stories from the past and trying to kind of recreate what they call the national identity. And so I was studying all this stuff and I really loved it because I just love these legendary stories, because often, you know, like I feel like legends are more interesting than the truth, right? Tell the myth. But the one particular Czech myth that I was just thinking of, in part because of today, right, and what we're living through, is the Czechs have this myth about St. Wenceslas. So he's like the king, good King St. Wenceslas from the Christmas Carol, right? He is the patron saint of the Czech lands. Lived around 1,000 years ago, Christian saint, all this kind of stuff. But so he's the patron saint. If you've ever been to Prague, the biggest square on Prague is the statue of St. Wenceslas on his horse. According to a famous Czech legend, St. Wenceslas is sort of living underneath and inside this mountain called Blaník, which is a bit south of Prague. And St. Wenceslas is there with all his knights and his whole army. And they are going to ride out at some point and save the Czech nation at the Czech nation's direst hour, right? Actually, versions of this myth exist all around kind of Europe, but this is the Czech one, that St. Wenceslas is going to come save us when it is our darkest hour. And the reason I was thinking about this today is the Czechs, I love the Czech sense of humor, and the Czechs make this kind of joke about this myth. They say, let's just think about the 20th century. We in the Czech lands, we had 40 years of communism. Then before that, we had World War II and Hitler. Before that, we had the Great Depression. Before that, we had World War I. And we still haven't had our darkest moment yet. Oh my God, how much worse will happen yet before Wenceslas actually comes and saves us? So, anyway.
Well, we have exactly the same in Denmark. It's so fun. You know the Hamlet Castle, the Helsingør Castle, right north of Copenhagen. Down way underneath the castle is a statue of a warrior. You know, like he's asleep, he's sitting like this. It's Holger Danske, Holger the Dane.
Okay.
The same exact thing. He will rise if there will be, a danger. It's funny, isn't it? See, the countries are linked. Cultures are linked so deeply.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah. And often through myths. I mean, I think that's one of the most interesting things is that you can find, like, I bet we could even, we don't have to do it necessarily because it might be too hard, but like, I bet we could find an example of a myth that is essentially the same thing in Denmark, in France, in Basque Country, in other parts of Spain, in Czech Republic, maybe even in like the US, right? Like some story that all these cultures have told each other, told themselves for thousands of years, or hundreds of years in the case of the US. I bet it's there. I bet we could find it.
Yeah, I would bet you that there are. And I mean, even just think about popular culture stories. You think about Star Wars or Harry Potter. Aren't they the same story? They're the same story.
Totally.
Somewhere, somewhere along the line. Yeah.
Exactly. So a lot of these kind of stories. So you guys have to let us know though if those characters do start to make some noise. So
God.
In these days and times, you just never know.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that we thought it would be kind of fun to get this particular group of people from the Guide Collective together is that all of us have something kind of interesting in common. And that's that all of us live sort of what I would call an insider-outsider multicultural life. Whether that's by where you were born or where you have adopted, or the fact that your culture actually is kind of bicultural where you already live. So I thought that would be an interesting topic for us to talk about today is biculturalism. That's different than being an expat in a sense, because I think it's possible to be bicultural, like Fran, who is bicultural, even though he's never been an expat. He lives in a place that hosts two cultures. You can be like Nina, who of course is an expat, but not the way we think of it, because you're not an American moving somewhere. You're a European who has moved somewhere else. And then you have Ben, who is an expat from the United States, but we never really know what country Ben lives in. It's always
Yeah.
It's a hard time following Ben, you know.
Yeah. Well, and I live in the United States, but I effectively spend, you know, sometimes up to half of my year in other countries, and in particular, Italy. Italy has been a place I've spent at least a couple of months every single year since I was 20 years old. So for me, Italy is sort of my second home as well. And I live a bicultural life in that way as well. So it's an interesting place to be, isn't it? I mean, I think that it's, I always think of us as like the change that has fallen between the couch cushions, you know, we're kind of that sort of forgotten slice of humanity where we're not really one thing and we're not really another, we're kind of fallen between the cracks. And I think that that's an interesting way to feel about the world and an interesting approach, but it does lead to some strange approaches and views, I think, that are hard for other people to understand. So this is the topic I'd like to discuss today is what is it to be bicultural? So Fran, I think I'd love for you to kick off by explaining how you're bicultural.
Okay, so Spain is kind of a complicated country because everybody probably have heard about the Catalonian movement. Catalonia is a region, state in the United States, who wants to be out of Spain. Also, some of the Basque people wants out of Spain. So all of this has to go back to long time ago, to Middle Ages, when we had different kingdoms. We are totally all different cultures. And to top of that, you have to understand that Spain was conquered for 700 years by the Muslims, by the Moors, okay? At that moment, the most advanced civilization in the world. The thing is that the Moors, they went all the way up to the north of Spain, but then they retreated. So Spain was divided in two. There's one thing, a pilgrimage called El Camino de Santiago, St. James Path, Christian pilgrimage, that divides Spain in two. From the Camino to the south, we have the 700 years of Muslim domination. From the Camino to the north, it's totally different. We didn't have that. So the Muslim tradition is a very patriarchal society. So when people, as a stereotype, when people think about Spanish people, it's patriarchy, very macho, very men-oriented. But if you come to the north, we had nothing of Muslim heritage. Unfortunately, we don't have the art, the beauty, the cuisine from the Moors, but what we have is a matriarchy. So here in the Basque Country, as our land, we're in the Pyrenees, we're a little bit isolated. The matriarchy is even more strong. So when people, especially Americans, oh, you're Spanish, they put you in a frame. That's okay, it's a little patriarchal, men-oriented, blah, blah. And suddenly they come to the Basque Country where women rule the whole thing. It's like, what? I'm saying this because my wife is somewhere else. So don't say that. So it's a huge matriarchal society. So to me, that's the biggest difference from where I live to the rest of Spain. And people don't understand it. The rest of Spain, they're like, you let your wife rule the money in the house? I'm like, yeah. Like, what's the deal with that? Well, in the rest of Spain, it's the other ways. You know, the wife is the one that has to give the money to. You don't have to, because obviously we have quality and everything, but the tradition is to, in my case, give it to my wife and she takes care of all of that.
Excellent.
And that's a joke.
Yeah.
In the north of Spain is where we have lower unemployment rates and economy is much better. Just saying.
I was going to say, yeah.
Just saying. Just saying.
Yeah.
I like
look at how many countries have female leaders. I'm just saying.
Yep.
You know, look at I'm not going to go into that, but
that'll be a topic of a different roundtable.
I know.
All right, so Nina, how do you find being a Dane who lives in France, and what brought you there?
Well, first of all, what brought me here, right in the beginning, was that I was hitchhiking through Europe, as many of us did, with a backpack, and I ended up in the south of France. And you know that when you get that feeling you are somewhere where you're supposed to be, or where you have been already, maybe in a former life, what do I know? I just felt, this is it. Yeah, it was funny. And it strange enough, it reminded me of California, where I had been like 5 years before. And I thought, there's something about the sunlight, there's something about the colors and all that, right? So I kept coming back. And then at a given moment, as it happens, I met somebody. And this young Frenchman, Pascal was his name, came to Denmark with me actually for 7 years, which I thought was a really good idea. He wanted to, but it also meant that he lived in the Danish culture and that he learned Danish and he learned to appreciate Danish food, which is not easy. I'll say that right away. Speak Danish is not easy either. It's one of the most difficult languages. And then after 7 years, we moved here to Avignon. Because we had a daughter at that moment there. She was 1 year old when we moved. And in my head and Pascal's head, it was kind of something, let's try it out, right? He wanted to go, I wanted to go. His parents were getting older, and it was not a problem for me to leave Denmark either. It's not that far away. It's not like the other side of the globe, right? And I think in my mind, there was also something about when you have a child, what you want for your children. Where do you want them to grow up? Do I want my daughter to grow up in Copenhagen, big city, or in Provence? And so after like 6 or 7 years where we were supposed to take a decision, right? Is it Denmark? Is it France? Just years has passed, and now 27 years have passed. And it's been this process of becoming part of the culture. It goes through what? It goes through language. First of all, if you don't speak the language, forget it. I mean, you're not part of anything. The second thing that was really important for me was I started working in tourism, which meant that I got colleagues, I got a work life, and my daughter's school, and meeting the parents, getting friends with parents. It was a lot of different kind of factors and different things that made me feel almost at home. And I say almost because the south of France, they're so, happy, shiny people and all that. But it's not easy to get real friendships. And I apologize on behalf of all my French friends that will listen to me, but it's difficult, it's tough. I mean, it'll be, ça va, how are you, da-da-da-da. And then the real friendships, because I will forever, and I know that, be the étrangère, right? The foreigner. Forever. I don't look French, but the best I think compliment I could get was I was working in French with some French people, and they said, "Oh, let's see your accent. You're from Alsace, aren't you?" Like northern France. And I go, "Yes, I'm here. I got it."
Nice.
But it's understanding, and you probably agree with that. It's understanding humor. It's understanding the little things between the lines, the body language. It takes a lot of observation. You get really tired of observing and then kind of copying. You know what I mean? I'm not saying copying. I'm obviously myself. So I feel like I'm a multi Nina, and I'd feel at home here. And then I'll when I can, take an airplane to Copenhagen, see my family, and I'm also at home. But on the other hand, I'm in between, and I'm not, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. I feel that I have a double treasure of culture and languages and all that. So for me, it's a good thing. And I love the thing about having two countries. And maybe I was not born to live in Denmark. Who knows? Maybe in a former life I was a countess in Provence. So here I am.
Countess, let's say countess, and not a peasant. You are definitely a countess.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm saying, obviously I was a countess.
Obviously. You brought up so many wonderful points there in that, Nina. I wish we could have just dissect each individual one, but so many of them were great. And I think that is a feeling that I certainly have had when the first time I ever went to Rome, which was when I was 20 years old, I arrived there and I went, oh, this is where I belong. It's just, it's sort of not even as romantic, I think, as maybe people make it seem. It's just, you get there and you go, oh yeah. It's like when you meet that person, like the person for you, the love of your life, you go, oh, there you are. It's not like this big thing, like a big lightning bolt. It's like, oh, obviously, this is where I always belong. So what about you, Ben? Have you ever had that experience of just like, hey, there you are, I belong here?
Totally, yeah. I mean, I was just nodding as both you were saying that when Nina was talking, because that's one reason why I'm in Prague. And it's such a weird thing for me because I'm this like obnoxiously kind of rational, analytical, calculating sort of person. But I feel at home in Central Europe, right? Like it's just, there's something, and by Central Europe, I definitely mean like there's this sort of Austria, Germany, Czech Republic sort of thing. Of course, they're different, they're distinct in their own ways, but there's also something which is different than, say, France, it's different than Italy. It's different than if you go up to the Nordic countries. Like there's something Central European, and it's weird and like, I don't know what, like makes me a little uneasily metaphysical feel like about it. It's like, I should have been born here, right? Like I just fit in and I click. And it is some weird things where, like Nina's talking about, that you have to observe. Yeah, I mean, so that you don't do something that is culturally inappropriate or something like that. Like you have to kind of be a good student of human behavior. But there's another thing which I think is partly, or one reason why I do just feel like I click here, and in the Czech Republic specifically in this case, is like huge generalizations, but Czechs tend to be a kind of like, let's stand back, and we're not going to be like big, like loud and sort of in your face or anything like that. We're kind of going to hold back, and we're also going to observe. And that's kind of who I am. Like I'm pretty sort of cautious. I'm not going to be the loudest voice at any party, that kind of stuff. And there's just the sort of thing where like, even it's funny, even like I was on a tram here today coming back home, and if you're on public transportation in this country versus I've spent a fair amount of time in Mexico versus public transportation in Mexico, the decibel level, or I think even in Spain, right? Like, I mean, from like Spaniards tend to be so much more talkative, and the Czechs, like, they're gonna keep it pretty quiet. So it's weird, like just some of these things that you would never maybe know ahead of time, but that you get there and just like, oh, I slot in here in weird ways.
Yeah, I think one of the weirdest. Go ahead. Yeah. One of the weirder things about being sort of a foreigner in a place that doesn't feel foreign is that you pick up a lot of the mannerisms and the behaviors, and it goes with you. And I can certainly say that I speak with my hands a lot more than maybe I should. And I drink a lot more coffee than I probably should. And it's also just weird because sometimes you just vomit out the foreign language, because sometimes you can't think of a way to express yourself. And there have been moments when I try to say something, but it just kind of comes out in Italian because it's like, that makes sense to me. And so there is an interesting way that your brain sort of confuse maybe the traditions you were born with and the traditions that you find other places. And in a way, I don't know, I think that makes you as a human such a rich sort of, I don't know, it's a rich tapestry of humanity, the way you can take that into yourself. So I'm just curious if there are traditions, because we talked a little bit about myths and traditions. Are there traditions that you have blended? And I'm curious to start with Fran on this, because are there traditions in the Basque region that are a blend between Spanish and Basque culture?
That's a good question. I would say no.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, what Ben, you were saying that, the Czechs are a little bit more quiet. Here in the Basque country, we are super quiet, okay?
Interesting.
I am the exception out of it. I'm the loud one. Shut up. So, the people in the rest of Spain, they're super open and super friendly, which is that Muslim heritage. Here we don't have it. So people think that we're always mad because we never talk. A huge conversation can be, hey, that's a conversation here. It's like, that's all you need. And as Nina, you were saying, here, for example, in Spain, everybody, you're my best friend. Oh my God, yeah. Here in the Basque Country, it's like, no. By the time I tell you that you're my friend, you're going to be my friend. But that's going to take 2, 3, 4 years. And once you're my friend, you're forever. But the language is totally different here. The matriarchal society. So we are very different from the rest of Spain. I mean, we speak Spanish, obviously, and we are Spanish. If we go into politics, that will be a different topic. I consider myself Spanish. Okay. And for example, when people from outside of Spain ask me, are you Basque or are you Spanish? I always say, I'm Basque. But when people from Spain ask me, are you Basque or Spanish? I say, I'm Spanish. Because you guys are asking for culture and a Spanish person is asking for politics.
Interesting.
It's a very difficult topic for us here.
It's not just a regional, they're not just, I mean, in France, there's a lot of regional identity. Right, if you ask somebody from Provence, your identity, they will say first of all Provence, and then France, and maybe way somewhere Europe, right? But it is the Basque Spanish thing? It's nothing about just a region. No, it's nothing to do with that. It's more politics.
There's a lot of politics because here we suffer the Franco dictatorship. We had 40 years of this guy, and he would kill anything that was not Spanish. So if you would talk a little bit of Basque, he would shoot you. If you would behave Basque, he would shoot you. So hate brings, the pendulum goes from one way to the other. So now we're on this side. It's like, okay, no, I'm Basque, I'm this and this and this. Well, come on, we can be in the middle. So here is like a very Basque thing. It's like, I'm Basque and that's how I am and that's who I am. So the rest of Spain, we're like, but personally, I feel Spanish.
Okay. So I'm curious, do either you, Nina or Ben, do you fuse or bring any of the traditions of your adopted cultures into your lives? For example, I mean, I never did this, but I always wanted to do La Befana with my kids, which is an Italian celebration where on Epiphany, the witch comes and leaves treats in the stocking. I always wanted to do that, but I never got organized for it. But also, in Italy, in Sicily, they do the Day of the Dead a little different way, which I always admired, but I never wanted to do it because it seemed a little too creepy, which is that on November 1st, the kids receive presents under their beds from dead relatives.
Nice.
And that always I love the idea. I thought, wouldn't that be kind of like cool? But on the other hand, ooh, that's a little scary. So are there any of those things that you've admired that you've taken into your own lives? Nina, go ahead.
Yep, but it was just very simple because it's kind of coming up soon. It's Christmas. I know it's not soon, but but Christmas is soon enough. Yeah, Christmas for me was so I can't tell you how important it was to me to do it in the Danish way in the south of France, which is not logical because it might be sunny and 15 degrees Celsius outside, so it doesn't really have the same kind of context. But in Denmark, we have a lot of, lighting the candles and the Christmas tree, and very important, when we give when we have the presents, which is the 24th in the evening, right? Not 25th. I mean, whoever invented that, it's 24th evening, right? And I felt myself, and particularly when you have a child, obviously, right? But I also felt just for myself that I couldn't do the waking up the 25th in presents. What is that about? So that's just one thing. And I also, there was something about Easter, because growing up in Denmark, it's like you have a whole 4 or 5 weeks of Easter where you're decorating your house with little chicken and little feathers and painting eggs and doing lots of stuff. And here's just like, so it's a Catholic holiday in France, right? The Easter is very important. But the Protestants in Denmark would have Thursday off, Friday off. Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, right? And here it's just like Saturday and Monday, all right, and then done with it, right? And there's nothing of this Danish traditions about feathers and eggs and whatever, they hide in France. They hide some chocolate in the garden that the Easter rabbit. I never heard about an Easter rabbit before that.
Yeah.
But it's funny how you feel it. I don't know about you, but I felt inside that it was not right. So, and luckily enough, my husband was very, agreeing upon, we do whatever, however, we just kind of combine it. So we did both, right? We kind of combine traditions around holidays, of course, that were important for both of us. Whatever was important for both of us worked. And then our daughter got a double celebration, which she was probably very happy about.
What about you, Ben?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was thinking of two things. One is like the traditions you carry with you, but then there's also the things that you, like, as you were talking about, Sarah, like that you make your own or that you kind of internalize. And definitely, I mean, this is something we can also talk about, but it's like ways that you feel either alienated from, or you feel like you lose the culture in which you're born. We can maybe get into that if you want to, but what I was going to say is that I'm not a patriotic American, and haven't lived in the US for a number of years. And so my kind of American identity is in some ways, I don't know, fractured or weak. But two things that I absolutely carry with me, it's kind of like what Nina said, man, I love Halloween and Thanksgiving, right? Like you gotta, like, and it kills me. Halloween kills me because in so much of continental Europe, it's barely a thing. Like I think it's putting in inroads. And I was super glad living in London the last few years, where like I could go trick-or-treating with my nephews there, which is awesome because you couldn't used to even do that in London. But so I just love Halloween, and it just kills me. Like, every year October 31st rolls around, I just want to be out trick-or-treating and all the schlocky decorations and all that kind of stuff. And then the other one is Thanksgiving, which, is in so many ways such a beautiful holiday, I think. Just, about getting friends and family together and having a great meal and giving thanks for stuff. And that is a tradition which I try to keep alive. And I find that other Americans usually do make an excuse to like cook Thanksgiving dinner somewhere at the end of November, or just because it means a lot to us, to hold on to what the holiday means, right? What I was going to say though about like then things that I've internalized from here and kind of made part of my own cultural aspects. One thing the Czechs have a reputation for around sort of Central Europe is being these sort of like funky granola outdoor nuts. And by nuts, I don't mean like they eat granola, which they do, but like sort of nutty people who just love to be in the outdoors. And so one of the jokes about Prague is that on a beautiful like spring weekend, especially the first beautiful weekend in spring, the city empties out. Everybody has got like their hiking poles. They've got their hiking suits on. They're all wearing like those, like their spandex, right? And they're kind of, they've all got their Gore-Tex on, and then just the city empties out. So everybody goes hiking on the Saturday. And I just love that because, I mean, I love the outdoors too. And there's not even like big mountains right around Prague. You got to go an hour and a half for mountains, but there's just hills everywhere. And to me, like, that is something that is great about here and the culture that I love is that, it's Saturday. You better believe I'm getting on a train and getting out of town, right? I'm going I'm going to go hiking. I'm going to go for a 16-kilometer walk and then come back into town Saturday afternoon or evening. And that I just love. And it means a lot to me to kind of have the opportunities here, and that people also value that here.
Oh, that's great.
Well,
that sounds nice.
I think I would agree with you 150,000% about Halloween. Halloween is the one thing that keeps me living in the United States. And I always plan all of my work every year about being sure that I'm home on Halloween, because for me, that's better than Christmas, to be honest. It's more exciting, I think, than just about, I know you guys who have never done Halloween, you're like, I don't understand, but believe me.
It's so good. I think it's wrapped up with like childhood memories also, kind of like Christmas. It's just like, it's so magical as a kid to get to go trick-or-treating. So if you've never done it, Fran and Nina, we're gonna go trick or treating sometime. Come with Sarah. We're all gonna go to Seattle for late October. We're gonna go trick or treating. Okay.
Yeah,
Let's do that.
When I was
The whole thing.
Yeah, when I was in Sicily last month, I was watching Stranger Things with kids, with a couple of kids, and I was trying to explain to them, like, because we're watching this opening scene when it's Halloween and they're all dressed up and they're going, and it was so funny to be like, yeah, this is what Halloween is. Look, like, and it was so exciting to try and explain that, like, yeah, you don't have that here, but look how cool it is. So, you know, you kind of wish, I love sending kids in Europe Halloween candy and that sort of thing. So that's my reverse cultural sort of thing, is I would love to give every child across the world, the Halloween experience once. So,
my first approach to Halloween was with E.T., the movie.
Yeah.
E.T. from home. We were like at the movies, what is this? Why is everybody dressing up? It's like, it was the only part in the movie I didn't get. When I was a kid, I was like, what the hell are they doing? It's like, trick or treat, what the hell is that? Yeah.
Oh,
you hadn't heard about it, or you hadn't seen it in other movies, or no?
I was, I don't know, I guess I was like 8, something like that. And I did it. I was like, why are they dressing up? I was like, not funny, the guy with the knife in the head.
Come on,
like,
didn't it look fun?
What's wrong with
Didn't
it?
it look fun, Fran? I mean, it's like, oh, come on, it's like,
oh,
yeah,
it
good
was fun with an alien in the bike.
Yeah, right.
That was it.
No, I think when you're not growing up with it, like Ben and Sarah, it's your childhood, right? It's part of you in that way. And Fran and I, we didn't grow up with that. And I remember clearly when they started kind of doing it in France, but it was much more commercial than anything else. It was not like, yay, there was kind of attempts to go trick or treating and doing, I don't know, people dressing up, but it just like a balloon where it didn't, because it doesn't link to anything that we have grown up with, nor in Denmark, nor in France, right? It doesn't ring bells, anything. It doesn't go with anything that we have known before. So, and it maybe also in France, particularly in France, I think, because of the November 1st and the Toussaint, All Saints, right? It's a very solemn, very serious, where you go to the cemetery and chrysanthemums on the graves, and and the Catholic Church in France was honestly, I remember that, was shocked about how it was called the American Halloween, because that was what was coming to France and taking the Christian, Catholic traditions maybe away, or pushing them a little bit. So it was an odd moment but it never really took on. I don't know. In Spain, it never the same thing. I don't know.
Are you suggesting, Nina, that maybe the Toussaint, the All Saints holiday, somehow doesn't go along with like dressing like a sexy nurse or something like that? Like those don't.
You got it. Yeah, I was going to try to, go in. Yeah,
it's 69 something.
69, yeah, exactly.
And you're making me rethink my Halloween costume choice this year, man.
There you go. You could pull it off.
Well, and just on this topic, for all of you guys that are watching, we're going to do a Halloween party here on Adventures with Sarah and Guide Collective with costumes. So if you guys want to join us for an all world Halloween party, we're going to see what kind of costumes Nina and Fran come up with.
We're like, okay, we'll have to improvise.
Do your best.
Fran and I might never get it now. We'll be dressed up as something that doesn't belong to Halloween. I guess or something. Oh, no.
One of the other things I wanted to talk about is sort of what are the benefits of being that sort of insider outsider. And I would just start off for myself. Sort of the benefits of being bicultural is just that I feel like I see the world in 4 dimensions. I see the world through the lens of an American, which, we have been taught to be entrepreneurial. We've been taught to be self-sufficient, this whole manifest destiny thing. We're taught to be wildly creative and always thinking about new things we can be doing. But I've been cultured and schooled by European culture, which is different, which comes at things where subtlety is important. Speaking in a lower voice is important, not being so in your face. And, just there's a lot of things that have cultured my behavior and my outlook, actually, the way I look at things. And for me, I feel like that's such a wonderful benefit because I can see both cultures for what they are, and I can understand why people behave in the way they do. What are the historical backgrounds on a lot of behaviors? Because a lot of things, I think a lot of behaviors we have come from our historical background that was
Mm.
prior to
Oh,
our
yes.
even being born, you know.
Mhm.
And I know in Italy, that's the case where a lot of the sort of behaviors of that I see in people are things that are deeply historical. So that's a really good thing, I think. I think on the other hand, the price that I feel I've paid for this is it's really hard for me to relate to people who aren't bicultural in the sense that, or they can't relate to me. Because when I'm in
Mhm.
Seattle, I'm exotic because I speak 3 foreign languages and I spend all this time in Europe, and I'm like, I'm not really, I'm exotic to them, you know. But then when I'm in Italy and I walk down the street of Palermo and I'm a 6'2" blonde woman, it doesn't matter that I speak their language, I'm exotic there too. And so you end up
Mm.
having a thing where no matter where you are, you're not really a part of either places. And so this is the conflict, the deep conflict for me is I love how complex my view of the world is, but it also turns you into a person that nobody can fully
Yeah.
understand in a sense. Does that make sense to you guys?
Oh yeah, completely.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
What are your
I've
thoughts about
actually,
that?
yeah, but I've
Yeah.
actually, yep. I'm sorry. I had this, you know, kind of epiphany one day. I'm going, God. I mean, I'm in a no man's land, kind of, because I'm in between. I'm living in France, but I'm an outsider. But I'm insider because I've been here for so many years. I go to Denmark. I know them so well. I read between the lines. I know the body language. I know the humor. I like the food even. You know, but I'm still kind of outsider. Not that they can see it when I walk down the street in Copenhagen. Obviously, I look Danish, but I feel in myself like a double Nina, which is a good thing for me. It's a good thing, but sometimes it can get a little schizophrenic. Is maybe the word. A good schizophrenia, right? I'm not. It's a good. One thing is that you feel part of two societies, and I do my best to follow both, you know, Danish politics and French politics, to be able to connect also with people in discussions when I go to Denmark or when I'm in France, obviously. But it is an odd situation. It is, yeah. It's a good situation because you have a more, you know, variety of thoughts. And the other thing again about my daughter, my daughter is a product of me Danish, my husband French. He has Italian, you know, family way back there by Seffusatti. My Polish grandmother. Our daughter traveled to Turkey. They thought she was maybe Turkish or Lebanese or something. Then she went to Argentina, you know, whatever. She is this, I thought that was so beautiful. She's a product of all of that, right? A European good mix of whatever. And then she travels to Turkey, and then they say, you look like a Turk. You could be a Turk. I'm going, what?
You know, I've had Turks even say that I could look Turkish because they're such a blended.
I know.
They're
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
they're European. So yeah, that's an
Yeah.
interesting quirk about Turkey. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you asked this question because I think when you have or identify with or whatever have kind of adjusted to multiple cultures, it is sort of destabilizing in a way, right? It's great. Like, I think the benefits are huge. And I even was just thinking about the very first time I ever traveled around Europe, which was back in high school. And I still got culture shock then, right? Like, it's like, ooh, because you're expecting things to be one way and they're not that other way. And now after, you know, assimilating to other cultures, like almost anywhere in Europe, not everywhere, but almost anywhere, it's like culture shock's just not a thing because you just know that things are going to be different and you accept that that's the way it is. And you sort of don't, I think you don't, or I should speak for myself, I don't cling to, well, this is the way it should be. Of course, I mean, I have had culture shock in China and other places, so it's not like it doesn't completely, I feel like, free you from that. But I think it just widens your horizons so that you are more tolerant and more flexible and all that stuff. The thing, though, that I also find, and I'm curious as to what all the rest of you guys think about this, is that it relates to the not exactly fitting in or something. But for example, when I go back to the US, and I won't get too much into politics, but like there's things that I don't understand anymore. Like, why is it this way? Or like, this is sort of crazy, right? Or you just, as Sarah, as even you said, like you see things from a whole different perspective, which people who, I guess if they're monocultural, right, they don't realize there's another perspective to see it. And that it's pretty weird when you go back to the place you kind of are from, or maybe Fran, if you go to Andalusia, for example, and you just sort of like see things like, why the hell are you doing it this way? Which is also kind of like your culture in some ways. So it's just, that's also destabilizing in good ways, but also kind of, I feel it a little bit alienating in some ways too.
To me, something like that happened when I was a kid. My parents sent me to do my senior high school year to the United States, and then I stayed 4 more years there. So I lived there 5 years. So to me, it was so weird, the American culture. I'm one of the kids of the transition, right after Franco. So I was studying all my life in an only boys Catholic school. And my senior year of high school, I did it in a public American high school. It was like the biggest cultural shock. I mean, first there were girls. I was like, oh my God, how do I do it? It's like, but are you? Then the way the students approach the teachers, that was so. Here in school, you had to raise your hand, and you could be there like 5 hours with your hand raised until the teacher would say, "Now you talk." Back then, hey, Mr. Diesel, I'm like, that guy is gonna be slapped in the face, back and forth. So to me, my cultural shock was when I was in the United States. I was totally blown away. I was like crazy, totally like nothing. And I brought some of the things, like you bring things from your cultures to here. I also brought in my house and I don't know why, now in the fall, we burn marshmallows. In Spain, we don't have marshmallows. So I love that. So I don't know why, at the beginning of the fall, now we're going to do it one day, burn marshmallows at home. The kids, they love it. It's like, oh, it's marshmallow time. It's like, oh. And the rest of the friends, they come, oh, we're going to do the American thing. I was like, yay!
I've had a lot of fun with that with my friends in Italy, is thinking about what are things that are just going to blow their minds that are so different. And so Halloween has been one. Marshmallows, doing s'mores with kids. I did s'mores in Piedmont and in Sicily with kids, and it was so sweet to watch them be like, wow. Actually, the reaction was different than I thought. Actually, in the north, they were like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. But actually in Sicily, it said they thought it was too sweet, which was very interesting.
Is that right?
Because American kids, there is no such thing as too sweet. That's not a thing. So you learn things that, even just every day I learn things. I think that for me is the biggest benefit of living in this weird 1 foot on each continent way. In Italian, we have a phrase, spacca in due, split in two. I feel very much spacca in due, because no matter what I do, if I'm home, I'm missing Italy. And if I'm in Italy, I'm missing my people here. So it's weird because you're never in a place where you really feel you're 100%. But that's sad. But on the other hand, it is actually very cool, because then you also, you have a lot of, it's a different perspective, and you see things in different ways. I would agree with that. So, we are.
No, I was just saying that it's a double, as I said, it was a double wealth, right? You have, and there was an interesting article I read about how when you speak different languages, how your brain, they have put, stuff on people to figure out what happens in their brain when they speak different languages. If you switch, that you have 2 or 3 languages in your brain that you can switch and you feel comfortable in. Then it's interesting also the way your mind works and how you think is different in the different languages. I thought that fascinating. I thought, wow, I'm getting more schizophrenic as things go.
So this gets to a question I really wanted to ask you guys, because I have been noticing with people that I'm close to that are, from different cultures, that when they speak English to me, or I speak English to them, versus when they are speaking their native language, how I feel like they're different people. When you speak to somebody in English and then you speak to them, the same person who you're close to, who you know well, in their native language, it's like having 2 completely different people. And I wonder that about myself. It's like, I think I must be 2 different people. One person when I speak English and one person when I speak Italian. I have to be. And I'm curious if you guys feel that way. Because Nina, you've said it so eloquently. There are the 2 Ninas. Do you think that those 2 Ninas come out when you speak the languages?
Well, first of all, there's the thing about when you speak French, you really use your mouth and your muscles, right? Or in Danes, you can kind of talk like this, and everybody would understand it, right? It's no. So right, physically, I'm different. I use my hands, which I also do right now, but there is something about I've never obviously watched myself from outside. Hopefully that will never happen. But you know what I mean? That you have that feeling that, yep, now I'm in this language here. Have you ever worked with a multilingual group? I've done that as a local guide, right? We have Australian, when I say multi-English speaking group, right? So you have Hong Kong people, you have Australian people, you have Brits, and you have Americans. Right there, just in English. I felt that, you know, when the Australians started talking to me, I was going, "Hey mate," you know, and then my British accent really came out when I spoke, and then speaking to the Americans, it went a little more, you know. So I it was kind of, and I felt, I don't know about you, but you can feel, you have that chameleon feeling that you're getting yourself into that mood, that mode, that whatever the other person is sending to you. And
Cultural chameleon. That's what I call it.
Strange.
Cultural chameleon. Yeah, you react to what they're doing, and then you kind of conform. And that's I think the skill that I've personally developed just professionally, because I go to countries that maybe I don't know a lot about. Like I was in Israel recently. I hadn't really spent much time there, but as soon as you get there, like you said, Nina, you're in observation mode. How do people greet each other? How do they do this? And you end up just developing almost a pattern in your brain for, okay, when I'm in a brand new place, here are the things I need to learn quickly. And you just kind of do that. So Ben, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways maybe I changed less than you'd think I would. I mean, I definitely think, yeah, there is like, I describe it as like different softwares. Like, you know, there's my Czech software, my English software, my German software. And so it operates in a bit different, and it's a way of thinking through the world a bit different. But I also think that, I don't know how you'd extend the metaphor, but like the CPU, the central processing unit, is still kind of me.
Wait, are your jokes the same in Czech?
Is that what? Sorry?
Are your jokes the same?
That's exactly what I was going to talk about. That's one of the hardest things I find is to be appropriately funny in a language that's not your first language, right?
I'm not sure you're appropriately funny in English, my friend.
That's true. Well, you know, you're right. Good point. Point taken. But to be like, yeah, to be funny in ways that people will laugh at, and then you say, well, Ben, we don't laugh at you in English either, right? But yeah, but no, because it is like my sarcasm and my sense of humor. I think it's harder. Maybe it's partly just also like linguistic mastery. I'm not there in some other languages in the way that I am in the language I'm most comfortable, like in English. So that's one where, you know, Nina, who's been living in France for however many years, like maybe you are equally funny, inappropriate, whatever. Ask my friends,
right?
Right.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
So Fran, I'm curious about you. When you speak Spanish versus when you speak English, do you feel like you're a different person?
I do. First, in Spanish, I speak much louder. I don't know why.
Really?
And in Spanish, I'm much more sarcastic. In English, I don't know why I'm more politically correct. While in Spanish, I love to whoosh. So, yeah. You know, when I speak English, I feel like a good boy. When I do Spanish, I'm not. So, yeah.
I'm also curious about something, because I was reading the newspaper. I woke up the other day, I was like half awake, and I was reading the Italian newspaper on my phone, and I didn't even realize I was reading the Italian newspaper. You know, I just read it, and it didn't occur to me which language I was reading. It just was like, oh, okay, because I was kind of half asleep. And then I realized that I remembered what I had read in English. And I'm curious, what language do you remember things in? That's my question to each of you. What language do you remember things in? If you hear it in a different language, do you remember it in that language, or do you remember it in your native language? Nina, I'd be curious about you, because you speak so many languages. What language do you remember things in?
God, I don't know. I mean, I was actually talking to a common friend of ours, Trish, but noting down, because I'm noting down a lot of stuff when I'm traveling and working. and I'm noting down in Danish, I'm noting down in French, and I'm noting down in English, and what I pick up phrases, right? And I'm just gonna mix them in my notebook, and I'm going, this is not good. So this winter I'm going to split them up. But I do think, I'm not sure, but I do think I remember things in the language that I've read it or heard it in. But it's like I get the question very often, what language do you dream in?
Yeah.
How do I know? I mean, how
Yeah,
do I
that's
know?
a myth. That's an American myth that floats around.
I can't. Okay, right. So it's not just me, right? But
no, it's like a myth. We've been told that
okay.
if you dream in that foreign language, then that denotes mastery of it, which I think is a bunch of garbage.
Never think about it. But there's a funny thing about when you work with different people from different cultures. When you start counting, like working in tourism, if you have to count people or whatever, count something, people often start counting in their original language.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah.
It's like something that is so deep in us, and if I really need to concentrate, it will be counting in Danish, which nobody understands, so that's quite fine with me. Right. So. Well,
yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right on that, Nita. Like, I know totally for myself that if I need to do, it's going to happen in English, which is weird to me because normally what I'm about to say would be so sickeningly pretentious that I wouldn't say it. But amongst this group of multicultural people, I can say it without getting in trouble. And that is like, I think in German most of the time, not most, much of the time. It's partly because my German is good and I spend a lot of time in Germany, but it's also like that somehow that software sits in here. And so, yeah, so Sarah, like I will definitely remember stuff in German that I read, thought, heard in English or something like that. It's a little bit weird, but totally there's just like multiple things going on at once in here, language wise.
When you guys take notes, do you take them in one language or in several? So I realized that I take like I don't know. So if I hand my papers to somebody, it's like, what the hell is that? So I don't want to like big picture there.
It's just to keep our notes secret from anybody else. We write in.
You don't get to know what I'm saying.
Well, it's called Pigeon. That's what it is. I think, and actually what I love is all my friends in Italy, because we text in Pigeon, which is half English and half Italian. Because sometimes there's just a better word in a different language, and so you just do it. So I think that I definitely remember things in English, even conversations that I had in Italian, which is really, I don't know what that means. I hope that that's not bad. But when I met the Pope, I know the Pope speaks every language, but when I met the Pope and I had my opportunity to say something to the Pope, I like froze for a second, and then I suddenly like vomited like words at him, and I spoke Italian, and I'm like, okay, what does that mean when you just like when you involuntarily vomit words? If they come out in that language, maybe that means something.
But maybe
I spoke Italian to the Pope. I don't remember doing it, but I did it.
But maybe it's also the context you're in, right? Maybe you are there with the Pope in Rome. For me, it's something about being in a context also. Whatever's happening around me, and that, But
totally.
Maybe you should do a little psychoanalysis there, Sarah. What's that Italian coming out of you?
Well, I have to say, this is such a wonderful conversation for me, just because I really feel like this is such a, if you live this way, you understand this conversation that we have had, which is that it really is, it's a wonderful thing, but it's also kind of a traumatic thing in the sense that you just sort of lose understanding who you are. But what I think is neat is that we are becoming kind of a new breed of human that's never existed before. We're multicultural in a global way, because look at us, the four of us in completely different countries. We're all friends. We all see each other at least once a week. And we speak multiple languages. Like we could switch into Spanish right now and we could all probably figure it out, We could all switch into French. All of us could probably have this conversation in French. And that's just such a neat thing. But I'm not sure that people like this have necessarily existed before. Does that make sense?
Well, before there were less languages, maybe.
Yeah, and there were less of us, right? I mean, there were definitely the cosmopolitans, but like now there's more of us. And I'll tell you, here's the fascinating thing, which you might not know this. Back in, say, the Renaissance, and you'd have all these interesting scholars communicating in Latin. The people in the Renaissance did not have Zoom. What? True. But anyway.
How did they do it?
I don't know. How would you do it?
No cell phones? I mean, what are you talking about? I mean, I don't know.
Those Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
All right,
this is,
so,
yeah.
we're running out of time, so I just wanted to close with one. At the end of our guide roundtable, we always like to close with one question, which you guys just have a second to think about and answer. So my question for all of you guys, this is an easy one. This is an easy one. As soon as the pandemic is over, let's say I waved my wand and the pandemic was over tomorrow, where would be the first place that you would be the next day? If your pandemic was over tomorrow, you had a blank plane ticket and you could get on a plane and go anywhere you wanted the next day, where are you going to be? I'm going to give you
plane out.
a second. First plane out to where?
First plane out.
Yeah, where?
Wherever.
Anywhere.
Come on,
Okay.
Fran, where are you
I
going?
need to go to Paris. I need to go back to Paris.
To Paris.
Back to
All
Paris.
right. Nina, where are you going?
All plan Japan. Many years of planning that and never had the money to do it in Japan. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, Ben,
Good choice.
where are you going?
And I'm shocked that this is my answer. I cannot believe what I'm about to say. But if you ask me right now in October, I'm coming back to the United States, and damn it, I'm going to eat some pumpkin pie. I just want like some pumpkin pie. It's autumn. I want me some pumpkin pie, and I'm not going to get it in Prague. Oh, so there you go.
Make it yourself. Make
You're
it yourself.
welcome to come and have pumpkin pie and go trick or treating with me and my kids. So I've got a guest in my house, so you are welcome.
Awesome.
Although I don't think we're not trick or treating officially this year. I think I'm just going to set up stations in my backyard with like candy pots and let my kids go pretend that they're knocking on doors, something like that. So if I could be anywhere, if I could transport myself anywhere, I think that I would probably want to be laying on a beach, like in the South Pacific or something like that. Because
Good choice.
Not a bad choice.
I did just go to Italy, luckily, so I would normally say Italy, but yeah, I might go someplace a little bit more forbidden. So I'm curious then, that question I'd like to pose to everybody who's watching this broadcast today. I would love to know this question. If you could transport yourself the day after the pandemic is over to any one place, please go ahead and leave that in the comments. I'd be really curious what everybody's looking forward to the most, because that will happen one day. Maybe not magically, but it will happen one day that we'll all get to travel again. So I want to thank my guests today, Fran Glaria Baines from the Basque region of Spain, Nina Seffusatti from Avignon in France, and Ben Curtis coming to us from his new home in Prague. Thank you guys so much for joining Guide Roundtable today. And I'm going to go ahead and repost this to the Guide Collective channel. And I wanted to host this today on this channel on Adventures with Sarah to invite those of you who haven't checked out the Guide Collective to join us over on our Facebook page at Guide Collective and our website, guide-collective.com, where we have the most fantastic travel magazine. All of these lovely people have contributed interesting articles. Our last month's theme was democracy. This month's theme is myths. And we're going to every month have a different theme and tackle different things with podcasts, writing, video, and the things that are coming out of this group are really impressive. So please, if you haven't checked that out, this is my invitation, a sampler, you might say, of what you're going to find over on Guide Collective. So we hope to see you over there. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you again next week or 2 weeks from now on Guide Collective Roundtable. Ciao.
Thanks, Sarah. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.